Welcome, everybody, to the Founders Fire podcast. I'm Eric Beck, and we're going to dig into some great stuff today. I'm really excited for you guys to hear it. Our topic today is systems with soul, how the best entrepreneurs gain lasting freedom. Now, we've all heard about systems, and certainly I've taught about it a lot, but I want to take a different angle today that I think can really help you guys. Some kind of topic previews. Ideas have consequences. Systems do have souls. Pretended neutrality. Are there any neutral ideas? Systems thinking in the three levels of systemization. So we're going to get into some how-to. Are problems really real? Self-deception and hidden decision drivers. And then a little bit of housekeeping. I have a new book coming out that's just come back from the editors. Excited about this. Want to get it into your hands. We'll give you some more information on it, but no surprise, it's called A Game Worth Playing. The subtitle is Take Back Your Freedom, Future-Proof Your Business, and Change the World. I'm truly excited to get this book into your hands because it is really the manifesto of the modern small business entrepreneur, and it really lays out the moral case for small business and why I believe it will be a path to freedom for millions of people, in the same way that the idea of home ownership after World War II was a path to freedom for folks. I think this is going to be a new wave, a new approach and method and mechanism that's going to bring freedom to an entire generation of those with an ownership mentality. So super excited about that. And then last but not least, announcement this month, September 26th through the 29th, you've got to join me and the Founders Fire team in Destin, Florida. We're doing a very different model for our retreats. It's a significantly reduced price. And if you hang on to the end of the podcast, I'm going to give you a discount code that'll get you even more off of that, but about a third of what it has normally been to come to one of our retreats. And they're amazing, life-changing, just to be around a group of folks that are like-minded, build community, but get real technique, real training, so that you can see the changes that you want to see both in your life, in your leadership capabilities, and in your business, of course. So we'll talk about that more in a minute. But before we do, I just want to ask you to get yourself ready for training right now. That's a big theme in my life, and many of you know my backstory in the martial arts, in the United States Army, in music, and in business. They all have really been resulting from getting under the tutelage of people who are real masters. And that is lost in our society right now. So lest you fall into the trap of infotainment, I do hope this is at some level entertaining, but what I really hope is that it's transformational. And the only way for it to be transformational for you is the approach you take. So don't be passive. Don't just sit there and listen. If you can, get something out to take notes. Make an action plan based on what you're hearing. When folks are in our coaching program, we call this the X by Y. This is the what by when. Every single meeting, every single conversation has to end with an action plan. If not, we are just at best giving mental assent to some ideas that sound cool, but will ultimately likely not get implemented, and therefore we will not see the changes that we're looking for. I'm going to start off today with this archetypal pattern that we see in the Old Testament in the Bible. And many of you guys know this, but if you're not familiar with this, or you've never really zoomed out to look at that, really the archetypal pattern that we see with the Hebrew nation is slavery, then escape from slavery into the wilderness and the chaos of that, and then getting to the promised land, the inheritance, the destiny. If you look at it, of course, what happens is once people struggle and make the big effort to get out of slavery, they find themselves in the wilderness. And that's where 99% of all people are today. That's where you probably are today. You're either still in slavery in Egypt, trading time for money, in constant time debt, in financial debt, in relational debt, in the pressure-driven, fractured attention economy of social media and all of the distractions, right? All of the bombardments, all of the echo chamber of whatever opinion you seem to click on, which then feeds you more of the same, right? This is not how we become balanced, whole, healthy human beings who have the capability of logical discernment, of spiritual discernment, of ethical discernment. Okay. This red ocean that we're all swimming in does not lead to freedom. That is Pharaoh. That is the crack of the slave driver, the whip hitting our backs. And that has not just been true in literal, actual slavery throughout human history. It has been true in slavery with a capital S. The entire history of humanity, to me, boils down to how do we get out of slavery and into freedom? And most of us are slaves to a system we don't even know exists. It's so pervasive. It's so translucent, transparent, ubiquitous. The fish that doesn't even know it's in the ocean. It's so used to the water. It just assumes it to be true and never even questions it, never knowing anything else. Okay, this is the elephant, the baby elephant that is tied to this small little stake in the ground. But when it becomes the behemoth, the many, many tons of an elephant, it still won't pull that stake out of the ground because it's been taught that it just never can. And so this asleepness, this lack of self-awareness of who we truly are and what we've truly been called to, that is Pharaoh, that's slavery, that's being in proverbial Egypt. Okay. Now, we all know that at some level, there is required a massive struggle to break free and to wake up. If we take the example in the movie The Matrix of Neo waking up, taking the blue pill or the red pill, that's such a great symbolism there for wanting to really know the truth, right? And of course, when we know the truth, we are told that we're set free. And that's maybe in the big picture, that's true. But in the short picture, that's not true at all. What actually happens when we know the truth is things get worse. And that's what happens, of course, in this story arc in the Old Testament, the Hebrews. Once they get out of the slavery of being in Egypt, they get into the wilderness where they don't have any food. They're not organized. They don't really know what they're doing. And there's all kinds of chaos. And people start saying, we had it better off back in Egypt. Yeah, it was hard and terrible, but we knew what to expect. And that is that proverbial, human tendency to be more afraid of the good that is unknown than the known that is bad, and to become habituated to it, to become normalized to it. And that is the problem. Most of society, most of our economic system is based on a consumption, debt-driven model that has only one objective, which is endless growth. Keep consuming. Don't save, because that'll wreck the economy. Don't invest in ways that actually produce long-term health and happiness. Buy the pill. Get the easy, quick way, the fast food. If you've got indigestion, get that antacid. Don't change your eating habits. That would be way too hard. We don't want any kind of discipline. We want you to get everything you want all the time, as much as you possibly can. We will rob you of your freedoms and then sell them back to you. We will rob you of the adventure of a life spent outdoors and sell it back to you on TV, watching Bear Grylls or watching football or watching UFC or watching, ice skating or some sport. We will rob you of your real experience and give you back one that you pay us for. That is the slavery I'm talking about. And that slavery is perpetuated by this set of systems that we've all inherited. I don't believe in conspiracy theories for one basic reason. It gives the conspirators too much credit. I do believe in a grand conspiracy, however, that is the irrational result of lots of selfish, short-sighted decision-making that lumps itself together towards a catastrophic end. You could say, here's this tragedy that's happened, where there's a small group of people planning it out in a boardroom somewhere. I don't think so. I do think that people are in position to take advantage of chaos, to take advantage of fear, to take advantage of the basic human foibles and vices so that they continue to profit. I think customers for life is a way a lot of our pharmaceutical companies view humanity. We're going to start them on some medication the day they're born. And if it works out the way we want it to, they'll be on a medication till the day they die. I do see the evil inherent in a greed-based worship of capital economy that we're all embedded in. But was there just a meeting of a few people a long time ago who planned all this out? I don't think so. I think that gives humanity too much credit. And it also does not account for the larger spiritual forces that govern and hold sway in the human experience. So if you are hearing what I'm saying, it means that you're in this world, but you're not of this world. It means that you recognize, like Morpheus says to Neo, something is not right here. Like a splinter in your mind driving you mad. There's something off. If you've seen the movie The Truman Show, okay, something's not right. Now, I think we all feel this. Okay, whatever your religious predisposition is, wherever you fall in the spectrum of belief or not belief, it doesn't really matter to me. What matters to me is that you have this sense that there isn't really true freedom being promoted from the systems we're all involved in, complicit in, and participating in. And of course, we shrug our shoulders and say, well, what else could we possibly do? Do we need to tear this system down? I'd like to step and say, no, actually. I think that would do more harm than good. What's needed is not the destruction of the systems that exist. What's needed is the transformation of them. And I feel like through human growth and the evolution of culture and the evidences of the consequences that come from certain ideas, that come from certain worldviews, we have an opportunity to step forward. If we start over at scratch, I really feel like we'll go backwards. And so while it can be alluring to think if it all fell down today, that'd be awesome. I don't think you've thought that through, though. I don't know if you've spent a lot of time in subsistence living. I don't know if you've been to third world countries where there is no government or where things are truly unraveled. That's not the environment that produces innovation and achievement, entrepreneurship, growth, creativity. That's not what happens when things fall apart. Mad Max is what happens when things fall apart. And so I very much am an advocate of building momentum towards change from within and through these systems, knowing we need to transcend them into a type of economy that we've never seen before. So that makes me excited, not depressed. And that really is our first big idea here, is that ideas do have consequences. When we hear that phrase, we probably just go, yeah, of course they do. Of course ideas have consequences. But I want to zoom out a little bit and land on this for a second. For you wanting to change things in your life, maybe in your family, maybe in your business or your community, or maybe the world, right? You're like, I want things to change. Okay. Before things can change, what has to change? What has to change is how we think. That's what has to change first. Okay, how do we change how we think? Since those ideas do have consequences, how do we change what we think? We change what we think by stories. Okay, behavior is a result of thinking and feeling. Okay, thinking and feeling are the result of the story we're telling ourselves. And if we don't question that story, if we don't hold up to the light of dialogue, of discussion, disagreement, our ideas, and we have unquestionable ideas, then we're getting into a trap that does not account for our own subjectivity. Okay? We are not objective. We do not know the objective truth, capital O, capital T. That's not in the capacity of humans. How do we reach social values and moral values that are timeless truths? One of the ways that we do that is we do that in community. From a multitude of views comes wisdom. From a singular view, that's all, let's say, drummed up by the cult of personality, where you can't ask questions, you can't question the official narrative. We don't celebrate disagreement. We run from it. We condemn it. A disagreement is heresy. Disagreement is treason. That is what will send us into the Mad Max world, is where we get into this tribalistic mentality where we're not willing to have the healthy debate, and all debates wind up descending into name calling, descending into what we would consider the junior high school, insult fest, where the one-liners and the quips and the personal degradation of each other becomes evidence of who's fit to lead. This is broken. And ultimately, we have to see that we're getting this result because of all the thoughts that have formed based on the stories we've told ourselves. So if we want to see a change, okay, on a global level, and I mean global as in actually physically global, but also global in our lives, you have to examine the stories you're telling yourself. So I want to ask you right now, okay, what is it that you want to have different? Okay, I'm taking you guys right into Founders Fire coaching. You get a coaching session on this podcast. Okay, what is it that you want to have different? Okay, do you want a better team? Do you want a wider reach for your market? Do you want more profit? Do you want more revenue? Do you want to know how to cut expenses? What is it? What do you want? Do you want a life that's not full of the pressure and the demands? Okay, whatever. Just what is it that you want? Now back up a step and say, what thinking would get you what you're having? Say, I want more freedom in my business so that it is self-managing and people are more self-governing. Okay, great. That's what you want. Now, what thoughts would make sure that that doesn't happen? What would you have to think? What would a person think that would then lead to this circumstance that you have now, where people are not self-managing? People are not self-governing. Everyone comes to you for everything all the time. What would those thoughts be that would lead to that inexorable outcome? Okay, now, one more idea. What story would that person have to be believing that would produce those thoughts, that would produce those outcomes? When we examine that story, when we examine that narrative and where we see our place in it, we now have the leverage to change. Okay? All ideas have a moral and philosophical background. Okay? There is no system of thinking or system of action that does not have a soul. Now, I don't mean it in exactly the way like a human has a soul, but sort of. Okay? Every system has a set of values baked into it that animated the creation of the system. Okay, if somebody creates a door, I don't know when the first door that was on hinges ever showed up in the history of the world. One of you guys do, probably, you look it up. Somebody send me an email and let me know about that. Okay, when was the very first door? What's the first, instance of a door on hinges? No idea, okay? But somebody did that, okay? That is a system. That's a system. Let me ask you, what are the values that are in that system? Efficiency, repeatability, consistency, safety. Maybe if there was a lock or a mechanism that held the door shut. Maybe comfort. Think of all that. All that and many more ideas, right, are baked into the system of a door. Okay, what about a system of systems? Now, I hope you guys are ready to sweat, because we're going to sweat on this one. All right, I'm going to go black belt on you right now. So put your mouthpiece in, because we're going to go after it. All right. We talked about a system. That's a door. What about a system made of systems? Do you see? That's orders of magnitude more complex. And now we get to something where we're starting to touch a spiritual truth. When someone says there's a zeitgeist, do you guys know that word, zeitgeist? A spirit of the age. We're starting to talk about a phenomena where systems of systems create culture. Let me give you a great example. Social media. Okay. How many of you have said something in a tweet or a comment or something of that effect that you probably would never say to someone's face? somebody that you disagreed with, maybe politically or on some other issue, and you typed in a comment that was basically just dunking on this person with some phrase that was pithy and edgy and, one-upmanship or whatever it was. Okay, now some of you guys are like, oh, no. Oh, me, oh, my. I would never do that. Okay. For those of you who are, following the Queen's rules for boxing. Okay. Have you ever read a comment that somebody else made that would fit this category? Of course you have. Why is that happening? It's happening because when you're participating in a system made of systems, there's a culture and a climate that emerges. It's an emergent phenomena, just like a rainbow. Okay, is there actually a rainbow? Well, there's the phenomena of a rainbow. When the circumstances are right, this thing appears. But you can't go hold the thing. You can't put it in a box, right? You can only participate with it or experience it under certain circumstances. By the way, the sun has to be at your back. The water vapor has to be in front of you. Okay, right? If it's the other way around, you can't see the rainbow. It's an emergent phenomena. Okay, there's another one in music, because since I spent so much time in that, this is one that's easy for me. It's called the overtone series. When you play two notes, maybe in a fifth relationship or an octave relationship, and they're very, very in tune, and there's enough amplitude, enough volume when you play these two notes, what will happen? You will be able to physically hear other notes you are not playing. Well, where are those notes? Good question. Well, who's playing those notes? Good question. It's a type of emergent phenomena. There's a third note that is generated from the interaction of the first two. Now, you might think this is spooky, and I would understand if you use that terminology. But I use this as the analogy to the spiritual world. There are things happening when systems overlap each other that are very hard to explain. Okay, it's orders of magnitude more complex. And what we're living in is thousands of systems on top of systems. And in order to win the battle on that battlefield, we cannot be naive and think about every system as just like a door. It's just one basic system that just is a convenience. No, it's a system with a whole worldview behind it. And when you layer worldview on worldview on worldview on worldview on worldview, now you're getting into what I would call the real game. And it's very easy to say, oh, see how all this played out? That must be a conspiracy. I tend to say that's an oversimplification. That is reductionism at its finest. That is bumper sticker slogan thinking that wants to boil it all down to one, tart little jab. And that's not going to get it. Okay. The problems that we're facing, as Einstein said, can't be solved with the level of thinking that existed when they were creating. When you've created a problem with a certain level of thinking, and I would add to his thoughts, and it is systems level generated, something else is happening. Now we have this happen with money. You guys know M0, M1, M2, M3, right? There's different ways that money gets created. And so when a bank loans you money to buy a house, does it take money out of an account and put it into a new account? No, it creates it from thin air, and we can get into fractional reserve lending and all the complications of that. But I just want to give you the simple example. Money is a system built on systems. Interest, usury. How is it even possible that money could generate money? Where did the other money come from? And now, just to be totally philosophical out there for a second, what even is money? Is money a social agreement? Is money just an efficient means of trading? Is it a mechanism that just makes trade possible? When you really start to look at the systems on systems on systems, it's like watching your favorite movie and realizing it took 10,000 people to make what you saw in 2 hours. Do you ever watch the credits at the end of a movie? especially the modern movies, if they have CGI and all that, it's thousands and thousands of people's names. See, we don't really understand what's happening behind the screen. And I'll go back and use the Wizard of Oz analogy, right? We don't ever really pull back the curtain. We just experience the output. We don't know how the steak got to the supermarket. We don't know what that animal went through or didn't go through, the shipping or the handling or all the 50, 60 different nodes in that system that got us to standing in the supermarket with the lights on and the air conditioning running and the refrigeration and the packaging. No. We generally are such the beneficiaries of all these systems on systems on systems that we don't even see them. We are the fish in the water that never considers the water. What if the water itself is the problem? Okay, that's what I'm trying to take us into, is to drop down and really get our eyes open to what's really going on. When we oversimplify, when we go tribal, and we get into this mentality of the simplification of these little problems, well, they're not little. Our descriptions are little, but they're really touching huge sets of systems. This is like the difference between knowing how to pull up a document on your computer versus knowing how your computer actually works. How many people have you met that actually know about the binary nature of how a computer does what it does? Does it process in series or in parallel? What is the actual result of the physics of a computer at that level? And you could really speak about what's really happening at that level. Most of us have no idea. Most of us have no idea how it actually works. We just use it. Do we know how our engine in our car works? No, we just use it. And what does that do? It produces a dependency on these highly complex systems that used to be a dependency on people. I know Joe, and Joe knows how to make a wagon wheel. Hey, I'm dependent on Joe. But what if Joe's wagon wheel becomes dependent on 30 other systems that are dependent on 30 other systems that are dependent on 30 other systems, and that winds up being the modern car? Now, who am I dependent on? I'm dependent on no one that I know. No person that I know in my life is helping me live my life. Okay, think about that for healthcare. Think about that for technology. Think about that for every facet of our society. We no longer have the connection. That's why everyone's so lonely. That's why we feel so isolated. That's why we're so depressed. Because the fracturedness of the modern world, with all its conveniences, has given us a huge lie, which is all this technology will take away work. But did anyone ever stop to say, what's wrong with work? Why should it be taken away? If work is taken away from me, what am I good for? And the answer that was sneakily put in there, not by a cabal of high-end corporate, bad guys, but by a much larger system than that. The answer that was given was leisure. We want to give you leisure. You need to take it easy. So we're going to invent all this technology that you'll pay us for, and then you'll have all this free time. And what happened? We didn't get more free time. We got sold on the idea of buying more stuff, because that's the overarching engine of the modern economic reality. Growth. Endless growth. Don't save your money because you need to spend your money. If you don't spend your money, then we're not growing. We have to keep growing. Everything is about growing. The debt models don't work if we don't grow. So, okay, we got pretty sweaty, right? Okay. You're like, dude, I'm a small business owner. I run a dry cleaners. What are you even talking about? Why do I even need to know this? You need to know it because that's the fight you're in. You think, well, I just need to deal with inflation. I just need to deal with better employees. I just need to deal with, getting people to show up on time and, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that tactical battle is important, and it does need to be solved. But you have no chance of solving it and getting out of Egypt, getting out of slavery, if you don't get into the general's tent and get some real training on understanding the systems that you're dealing with. Okay. Every idea has a worldview and a set of values baked into it. There are no neutral ideas. It's not just, hey, well, it's just business. I'm just doing business. That's neither good nor bad. It's neutral. That is that simplistic thinking, frankly, that keeps you in the sheeple category. You just herded along doing what you're told to do. Now, some of us don't like being herded along. And at some point, you were like, I don't want to be an employee. I don't want to do what someone's telling me to do. I want to follow my heart. I want to follow my calling. And this is where we start to buck against the trend of being in Egypt, quote unquote. Okay. Well, so maybe you start your small business. Maybe you borrow money, or you get some investment capital, or somehow you just launch out on your own. Great. You know what happens then? You're in the wilderness. And in Exodus 18, Jethro gives this amazing speech to Moses. He basically says, good job getting free. That was solid. There were some miracles there. And if you started your own business or you're thinking about it, yes, it does require some miracles. And it requires a massive leap of faith. It really does. Okay. Now, I'm not talking about trust fund babies who, daddy's got $500 million in the bank and there's not really any real risk. You're just playing with starting a law firm, or you're just playing with starting a manufacturing company. You're just playing around. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the person who has bet literally everything, more than everything, to get this business going. That's some miracle territory, okay? So Jethro says to Moses, great job. That was awesome. That whole Red Sea thing, stellar. Really good job. And then he says, but God help you. What you're doing now is not good. And then he, really the second half of that whole chapter, explains to him the principles of systemization. Right there in the Old Testament from 3,000 years ago, or whenever it was written. Somebody knew something. I mean, like, man, you read that? I'm going to tell you what, you're going to learn something. You're going to learn something, okay? He was saying, good job getting out of slavery, but you have some work to do. You can't just remove a system and then hang out. You have to replace it with a better system. And this was a power sharing system as opposed to the slavery model, which was a power taking system. One person or a group of people are taking power from everybody else and then enforcing their will on the backs of everyone to the benefit of very few. Okay, so we got out of that system. Now what do? Well, we have to build a new system. Okay. Now, as most of you guys know, if you know the biblical story, it really was only going to take about 6 to 7 months to get 1,500,000 people, maybe 1.5 million people, to walk them from where they got out of slavery into the promised land. Would have taken it at a minimum probably 6 months, but at a maximum a year. It wasn't really that far, and it probably could have been done fairly efficiently. But of course, you know the story. It took 40 years to get there, and when they did get there, they were still arguing about, we can't do this. This is, we're going to get overwhelmed. And again, if you take the story arc here and you allow the archetypal symbols to really speak to you, what is the promised land? Is this about like colonization and that sort of idea? No, not at all. This is about saying you have a destiny. You have territory to take. Let's go back to our example of being that small business owner who's running the dry cleaners. Okay, if you own a dry cleaners, you have territory. There are people literally in your zip code that are in your quote tribe. They come to you. That's a territory. When you start to see your small business as a territory, okay, as an area that you can go in and bring increase, freedom, profit, value, relationship, community, you can walk into chaos and bring order. Okay, now, does this mean, there's 5, dry cleaners in the Tri-County area, and my job is to go in and take it from them? Oh, no, 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 no. That's ridiculous. That thinking, I would call that medieval thinking, right? This whole idea of win-lose, right? We got to get rid of that. That doesn't make any sense. It's not win-lose. The reality is that when you're doing what it is you're called to do, there is no competition. So if you're still in a competitive mindset, you're really still in Egypt. You're really still indoctrinated in the slave model. Okay. And you're never going to get the freedom you're looking for applying that kind of thinking. All right. So again, painting I don't know what the right word would be here. Some of this is teleological, right? This is the telos, that's the Latin word, the end of the matter. What is the end point? To me, the end point is to produce the context for the daily realization of your calling and the calling of your people in the service of your customers. What does that do? It doesn't make them dependent on buying stuff from you all the time. Real value is not about unending economic growth. Okay, that's a cancer, and you got to see it for what it is. Real value is about the quality of the relationships that we build with each other. And when we exchange goods and services for legal tender, and we create that economic opportunity for all of us, it, again, can't be about, I'm going to go crush the competition. My dry cleaners is going to put everybody out of business. That thinking is not going to get you anywhere, okay? The command and control military model. Let me ask you this, guys. What do you call a business? What's another name for a business? Somebody just said it out loud. Listening to this, some of you guys are in the military. You already know what I'm going to say. What's another name for a business? A company. What kind of word is company? Military. Okay. Who runs a business? CEO, COO, CIO. What's the O stand for? Officer. Why so many military terms? Okay. And I could go on. Okay. Why? Why are those military terms there? Because we have been framing business through the story, through the lens of conquest. And ultimately, that's going to be a problem for us. If we do that, we're still stuck in the Pharaoh world. We're still stuck slaving. Okay. All right. So much more to say about that. I hope that you do join us in Destin for the retreat, September 26th to the 29th, because we're going to go a lot deeper into the history of these ideas and where it's leading. Those of us who are in America, if you're in America listening to this, it really is going to lay out a plan for what is coming, the new economy that's coming, and how you get your small business ready for that, and how you prepare your family and yourself for that. Think Noah's Ark. Think Noah's Ark. Okay. I'm going to hit pause on that for a second. And let's come back to some practicals. Okay. So you're talking about systems, Eric. Founders Fire is about systems. You as the founder of Founders Fire got your start at eMyth. That's all about systems and systemization. Okay. So give me some practicals here on systems. Well, here's something really easy. We talked about systems thinking, which means that we're always recognizing any problem is the result of prior thinking that governed the behaviors that produce the problem. So we're never just going to look a problem in the face and take it at face value. We're always going to look for the systems of thought that led to it. Okay, that is systems thinking. And when we have systems on top of systems, like the computer analogy I gave, it takes a really high level of discernment to not chase after the wrong bad guy. Okay? All right. So what about buildings? That's recognizing systems. That's like speaking the language of systems. It's like understanding and discerning systems. Okay. What about building systems? Okay. Do I need to have that depth of knowledge to build good systems? Not necessarily. Not necessarily. In fact, it's quite simple to do it, but a lot of people get stuck on it. Okay. Most people think of systems as a giant to-do list. And I'm going to write out exactly how to do something. Step 1, step 2. I might put some other frameworks around it, but that's me systemizing. That's not you systemizing. That's you writing policies. That's you writing procedures. Those are not systems. Okay. Systems are like a living entity. Okay. If you think about the difference between an airplane and airplane parts. Okay. Say you got a 747 on the runway, 2 of them. Okay. And in one of them, you totally take it apart, and you have the handbook for how all the parts go together and how it operates. That's a policy document. You don't actually have a system yet. But that second airplane that is assembled, that's a system. A system is a living, dynamic set of relationships that produces something that can only be true when all the parts are integrated. Okay, so with that in mind, when you go to systemize your business, you need to approach this from a top-down perspective like a lawnmower. Okay, so imagine a area of grass that is 10 inches high. Okay, you are not going to get any lawnmower that would take it from 10 inches to a perfect putting surface on a golf course, okay, in one mow. That's never going to happen, right? But that's what we try to do. We think as technicians, to harken back to my early days at eMyth, thinking like technicians, we try to explain things like technicians. How do technicians think? They think about step 1, step 2, step 3. Like Michael Gerber said, doing it, doing it, doing it. There's no big picture. They're just doing the work. Any of that big picture stuff, all that talk, that's getting in the way of the work. Have you ever felt like that? Or have you had people on your team be like, enough already with goal setting and like plans and vision. This is ridiculous. What are you working with, some consultant? Let me get to work. Oh man. Careful. You got to be careful there. Why? Because if we don't view the strategic work as work, the tactical work will never reach full potential. Okay. Why do we get stuck in that? Because that's where we were born. We were born as technicians. Okay, when your parents were raising you, hopefully they made you do chores. Okay, that's great. Chores are tactical, detailed technician work. But what should be happening in our schools and in our families is they started helping you learn how to manage the tactical work. And then they should have started helping you learn how to manage managers. And then they should have helped you start to see systems. That's a real education. But you know what the problem with that is? The problem with that is too many people will leave Egypt. I mean, you start teaching people how to think for themselves instead of what to think, you're going to wreck the whole system. Heck yeah. That's what this whole podcast is about. That's why our software that all of our clients use, called Spartacus, is called Spartacus, because he led a slave revolt. That's the whole point. We have got to get out of Egypt. You have to leave Egypt. And you also have to get Egypt out of you, because it's deeper in there than you can really understand at first look. So when we're systemizing, we can't just go into technical thinking and write out a giant policy document. Okay, that's like trying to mow from 10 inches down to that putting green in one cut. So we're just going to take the first cut, just a couple inches. And what is that? Practically speaking, it's two things. It is defining the what and the when of a role. Okay, what has to happen and when does it have to happen? Most of you guys have never designed a job. You created a giant to-do list, a giant list of responsibilities, and just started shuttling at that person, and that's now, quote, their job. And you probably don't even really understand the what and the when. And if you went to them and said, hey, what did you do today? They'll tell you a bunch of great stuff, but you don't really know how that relates to yesterday or the day before it or the month before that or the quarter before that. There's no continuity of work, which is why it's slaving. Okay, what is slaving? Slaving is doing the same thing over and over and over in this iterative, mind-numbing, soul-sucking way of just working. It's just work, right? And again, I always quote these funny 80s songs because I'm a child of the 80s. You know, everybody's working for the weekend. Loverboy, right? Yeah, everybody's slaving for 2 days of pretend freedom where we steal your adventure and sell it back to you. That's what we're in. Well, if you're listening to this, of course, you don't want to be in that. I don't want you to be in that. And we can get out of it. How do I do that? How do we do that? Well, at Founders Fire, the way we teach it is these 3 levels of systemization. First is defining the what and the when. What is happening and what is it happening? Okay. Once that's laid out for a week or 2 for somebody's role, you have a good handle on systemizing because you now can start to see patterns. Okay. And I teach this as paving the paths. If you were to build a brand new high school, let's say, you probably put in the sidewalks. You know, school opens in September or August and all the students are welcomed in. What's going to happen with those 90-degree sidewalks? People don't like walking in 90-degree angles. It's not natural. So what do? They curve and cut the corner. What does that do in the grass? It creates a little path. What does some well-meaning teacher try to do? They go put a little chain link whatever with a sign that says keep off of the grass. Do you see how ridiculous that system is? That is not a very well thought through system. And of course, we are drowning in systems that are not very well thought through, some of which produce inconveniences like that, but some of which produce much, much more deleterious effects. All right, so what should we do, Eric? We should pave the paths. Don't put down any sidewalks. Seed the lawn. Let the kids go where they go. Now you'll start to find the most efficient ways from point A to point B. Then go pave those paths. Now you have a key to true systemization. If your system is trying to get somebody to do something that is not natural to the workflow, they're going to resist it, they're going to resist it, and also they're going to resist it. And while you might get malicious compliance, you're losing their heart. The more you make somebody do something they genuinely don't believe in, the less their heart is there until you get somebody who will just quit for 10 cents an hour more down the street. Okay, again, what is all that? Pharaoh, slaving, wage slavery. It's what we all have to get out of. So the first step in systemizing is defining the what and the when. The second step, later, like weeks later, is to define the how and the why. Okay, so I know what I'm supposed to do, and I have a sense of the timing of the interval. Is it every day, once a week, every other week, throughout the day? I've got a sense of the timing of it, right? Now I want to start to define, well, how is it best done? And that's where we start to see the process improvement kick in. If you do process improvement before you've done the how and the when, you're not paving the paths. You're making 90-degree angles. And it's not going to work out. Your people are not involved, so there's not going to be any buy-in. Ultimately, we've got to take this systematic approach, which is defining the what and the when, and now we're going to define the how and the why. The why. There has to be a clear understanding of why we do it this way. And you can't go into bad parenting and just say, 'cause I told you so. Remember that whole authoritarian cult of personality? You can't ask certain questions. These things cannot be questioned. It just doesn't work. It doesn't work. It's slaving. Okay, we have to make sure that our team understands the why. And if they say, well, that's not a very good why, we have to be open to an innovation in that moment. Now, can we do that with all things at all times? No. We do need people to follow the plan. We do need people, when the ball is hiked, to use the football analogy, run the play. But we also have to look at the game tape and to say, see how we designed that play? It doesn't work very well. We need to redesign that play, or we need to reassign responsibilities on that play. Now we're really getting somewhere. Because if we design the system right, and people believe in the purpose of that business, and they see themselves as an integral part of that team, now we're moving away from an owner-centered business to a vision-driven business, where that vision is boiled down into daily activities, to goals, to KPIs, to a plan that people are excited about. Now, this is what I call a game worth playing. And not to sound like I'm just constantly plugging my book, but yes, that's what the book is about. How to do that, how to drop into that. Now, that third layer of systemization is where we started, which is policies and procedures. There does need to be somewhere where we have the nitty-gritty, super detailed written out for a couple of reasons. One is it's good for training, but it's also good for expansion and growth. If you want to scale your business, these systems have to be in order in all three levels. If you want to sell your business, would you ever buy a business where you couldn't see all three levels? People don't know what to do or when to do it. People don't know how to do their job, and they don't know why they're doing their job. And there's zero documentation. And I'd like to sell you that business. Like, no one will buy that business. Okay, if that's you and you want to sell your business, we need to talk, because we need to get your systems in order so you have something that's actually sellable. You're not going to get a 2.1 multiple in EBITDA and need a job in 2 years, right? You're going to lose half of your sales price to taxes on day one, and then the clock is ticking before you need to get a job, okay? Build the business right, and then you really have an asset that you could choose to sell, or heck, If you get it running right, why would you sell the ATM, right? Let it keep running. Ultimately, in this idea of systems that have souls, we're looking at what is the impact on the person who's using the system. Okay, so we'll go back to social media. Are most people happier when they're done with social media for the day? Are they happier? Do they feel better about themselves? Let me ask you this. Do you feel better about the world? Do you feel better about the future? What is that system producing? That system has a soul, and that produces an outcome in you. Is it freedom? Freedom from fear? Freedom from anxiety? Freedom from comparison? Is that what it's producing? Okay, you know about the 80 neuroscientists, right? That are on the other side of your iPhone. Okay, when you're looking at your phone, there's 80 neuroscientists on average on the other side of that app who know more about your perceptions than you do. And they know how to keep you scrolling. And the algorithms that they've built know more about what you want to see than you have any idea. This is systems on top of systems on top of systems. And you think you're going to walk up with your 1759 musket and do battle with an F-18. That's what you think. Okay, we got to be real, people. We got to be real about this. The layer upon layer, the complexity on complexity must be examined. It must be challenged. And one of the easiest ways to do it is to look at our use of time. Look at the output. How many hours spent scrolling and what did you get for it? See, if you don't know what you're getting for your investment, you're not a wise investor. What's your most precious resource? Your attention, your time. What are you getting for it? I don't know. I just like it. Careful. Because pretty soon, a week, a year, years, a decade has gone by. What did you get for the 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 hours you spent scrolling? I don't know. It's just fun. Well, there's a group of us that thinks we're not here for just fun, but we're actually here to take ground, to set people free, to bring true freedom. Well, that's not just measured in profit. So don't go off, the road on that side. There's a guardrail there. There are things that are profitable that are immoral, right? That are not healthy, that ultimately are devastating. So we can't just go, well, if it's profitable, it's good. I'm being blessed because I'm making money. That's not necessarily true. It's also not necessarily true that if I'm wrecking everything and creating no value and going into destitution, that I'm somehow morally above everyone else. That's also not true. What we're looking for is the combination of values-driven systems that serve people and that do so in such a way that the user of the system grows by using the system. Okay, let's go back to the whole technology gets us away from work. Think about a bicycle. At some point, somebody said, hey, instead of a bicycle, let's throw an engine on there and we'll get a motorcycle. Okay, what's the effect of that? I don't know. How many motorcyclists have incredible quads and super defined calves? What's the effect of using that system over the long run? Well, it's certainly not better leg muscles. And I'm not a motorcyclist, so don't get upset with me for my ignorance. But just on the face of it, right? Pedaling a bicycle has the effect not only of getting you where you want to go, but of building strength and capacity. If we don't design systems with a righteous soul, the effect of the system is to make us dependent on it. If I don't get my 10,000 steps in a day because I'm sitting in a chair or I'm riding in cars all day long, what's the result of those systems? I become dependent on them. How do you get your food? I'll go to the grocery store. What if the grocery store doesn't have any food? Then I'm in big trouble. How do you take care of your health when you're sick? I don't know what to do. I go to the doctor. What's the doctor do? They tell me what pill to take. What if you didn't have the pill? I'm in big trouble. What about if your house catches on fire? Oh, call the fire department. What about if there's a crime in progress? Oh, call the police. Do you see how we have robbed ourselves of our human right to self-sufficiency and capacity and capability? And we've turned ourselves into these techno slaves, so dependent on technology that if we have an issue that's pretty serious, like COVID, the best we can do is hoard toilet paper. That's the level that we're at. But not you. Not you. You're not there. Or else you wouldn't be listening to this, right? You're not there. And you know how shockingly embarrassing that is, right? You know you have to have capability. You know you cannot be wholly dependent on a system with an unrighteous soul. So don't you dare build systems in your business that are this thoughtless systems like everybody else's systems. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really think about it. I don't want to think that hard. Yeah, you do. Yeah, you do. Because you want to see righteousness. You want to see people set free. You want to be free. And this is really in many ways the heart of the idea behind Founders Fire. You know, in that logo, you can see a lion. There's fire, but there's the face of a lion in there. Why? That's a whole other podcast. Come to the retreat. We'll give you the whole story. But the reality of it is that we're here to establish something. We're here to fight back the forces of evil because they are certainly out there. And while I don't, like I said earlier, subscribe to the big, conspiracy plan and all that stuff because it gives too much credit to people who are idiots and also people can't keep secrets and a whole other bunch of logical reasons that most of that doesn't make any sense. That does not mean that they're not evil perpetrators, people who will take advantage, and people who will profit to other people's demise, people who themselves are deceived by their own hidden decision drivers. And when those people put their hands on the wheel of culture or the hands on the wheel of business or economics or any of the areas that affect all of our lives, that they won't just drive us right off a cliff. Oh, they will. They sure will. The cool thing is this, though, guys. You can be the driver. You just need to go in to the promised land and start to realize that there's a place for you to make a difference. Right now, in your small business, I'm not talking about taking over the world, but in your small business, you can change the world because your small business occupies territory. And that territory needs to be governed wisely, and it needs to be sure that the systems that we use inside of it produce the kind of people, not just the profit, but the kind of people that we all want to be and we all want to be around. I hope you guys have found this podcast useful. I hope I stirred up some some craziness. I do want to invite you guys all. We still have a few spots left to the retreat in Destin. It's September 26th through 29th. It's the only retreat we're going to do this year. So if you've been thinking about, oh, maybe I'll do it, definitely do it. I also want to extend a warm greeting and a welcome to and a call to, really, any of you guys who feel like, I want to coach people in this. I use this phrase, is your calling calling? Or you're like, you know what? I would love to help business owners learn what you're talking about. A retreat is a great place for you to start that process. You can really see the program from the inside, get to meet the team, and get a better understanding of what we're about and learn a ton. So it's a great way to do that. So again, if you guys head over to foundersfire.com/retreats, that's retreats plural with an S on the end, you'll get all the good details. So hope to see you guys there. Thanks again for listening. If you like this, please give us a thumbs up and the stars and all this stuff if you don't mind. Write a review, what you found useful, and share it with your friends. Share it with other business owners that you feel like really could benefit from this, because that's how we make things change. We promote the ideas that we know are grounded in truth, and that will lead us to a process where we get more mature. That is it. Training, not trying. Welcome to the dojo. Thanks for training with me today. We'll see you guys next time.